Hey everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Mike Gibb. I run accountrecovery.net, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar where we're talking about artificial intelligence, how to empower human agents for better efficiency. Artificial intelligence is transforming the way debt collection operations work, but it's not about replacing human agents per se, it's about empowering them. By leveraging AI, human agents can handle complex tasks more effectively, leading to better outcomes and increased productivity. So today in this webinar, which is being sponsored by Skit.ai, we've got a panel of industry experts here who are going to discuss how AI can complement your team skills and boost operational efficiency while also cutting costs. We hope today you'll learn actionable strategies for integrating AI tools that make your agents more effective, allowing them to focus on high-value interactions and achieve greater results. As I mentioned, this webinar is being sponsored by Skit.ai. Skit.ai is the accounts and receivables industry's leading conversational voice AI company, enabling collection agencies to streamline and accelerate revenue recovery. Skit.ai's compliant, configurable, and easy-to-deploy solution enables businesses to automate nearly 1 million weekly consumer conversations. Skit.ai has been awarded several recognitions, including Disruptive Technology of the Year, the Stevie Bronze winner, which was awarded by the International Business Awards, and Startup of the Year in Artificial Intelligence in 2021 by Entrepreneur India. Skit.ai is headquartered in New York City, and you can learn more about them by visiting them online at skit.ai. Let me introduce you now to our panelists. Vaibhav Gupta is a director of go-to-market and product delivery at Skit.ai. He leads the tech solutions and delivery of voice and multi-channel conversational AI solutions for North American enterprises to revolutionize interactions in the debt collection and customer contact center space. Prior to this, he worked with Schlumberger, an oil and gas service company, in multiple geographies, driving technology and operational delivery for leading upstream operators. Porter Heath Morgan is an attorney and advisor who partners with clients to help their compliance and leadership initiatives. Heath is a third-generation collection attorney who has grown up in the industry and has 19 years of in-house counsel experience for collection agencies, collection law firms, debt buyers, healthcare providers, and technology companies. Heath is passionate about training and education and is a frequent speaker for ACA, NCBA, RMAI, and serves on the ACA Council of Delegates, while also being a founding member of the Colorado Creditors Bar Association, where he serves on the board of directors and as the CLE committee chair. Heath is licensed in Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, Wyoming, and is a member of the Supreme Court Bar. John Schroeder is the Chief Technology Officer at RTR Financial Services, where he's worked for more than 15 years. He is an AI optimist who takes great interest in artificial intelligence, security, privacy, and the crossroads at which they intersect. John is a CISSP who holds various Microsoft, VMware, Cisco, and CompTIA certifications, along with a bachelor's degree in operations management. Everybody who's watching us live today is absolutely invited to ask questions and submit comments during the course of our webinar. You can use the chat or the Q&A to submit your questions and comments. If you wish to participate anonymously, click on the anonymous button in the Q&A, and anything that you send to us, I promise, is sent and received anonymously. Since we do have an attorney on the panel today, just in case he gets some compliance questions, let me read the following disclaimer. This presentation is not intended to be legal advice and may not be used as legal advice. Legal advice must be tailored to the specific circumstances of each case. Every effort has been made to ensure this information is up to date. It is not intended to be a full and exhaustive explanation of the law in any area. It should never be used to replace the advice of your own legal counsel. All right, well, let's jump into our conversation now. So let's start to talk about the ways in which AI can be integrated into existing collection processes to both enhance efficiency, maybe without disrupting current workflows. Vaibhav, I see you nodding as I'm asking this question, so I'm going to ask you to go first.
Sure, Mike, sure. My thoughts on this is that right now the collection process happens in a very, very well-defined manner, right? If I try to break it down largely, we see an authentication happening, which is like RPC. We then try to drive the consumer towards a payment, which we call a PTP, getting a PTP from the consumer. And then finally, the goal is to get a collection from the consumer himself or herself on the call, right? Or maybe through offline medium. So if you divide these sections, it's like RPC, PTP, and collections, payment on call or collecting the payment. So largely 3 sections, right? And all these 3 segments of the funnel are kind of mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, right? And if we try to kind of automate and just think from bot and human perspective, bot or human can do either of these sections or all of these sections. The whole concept or the efficiency lies behind joining these pieces, right? Let's say if the bot is doing the entire end-to-end collections, it's like the best case scenario. But let's say someone comes on the voice bot, does only authentication, or and also agrees to pay, let's say $100, but then says, I want to talk to a human agent, right? So this is like a voice bot or any AI agent assisting a human agent, right? So they're complementing the human agents, and the beauty of this entire concept lies behind human agents picking up from the point where these AI agents have left, right? So that is how I see the workflow or the integration of AI happening with the current process. That if the voice bot does everything, well and good, that's the perfect solution. If voice bot does the partial kind of uh, give the partial solution to the consumer, the human agent should be equipped to pick up from that particular point and not re-ask the same things, which might decrease the customer experience and also not save the FTE minutes, because in the end we want the FTE minutes to be saved. So that's the overall thought that I have, that yeah, the AI agents and human agents should work in hand, and that's how the system will flourish.
Just to add
So
to what,
just
oh, I
yeah, go ahead,
apologize,
John.
Mike.
Go ahead. No, go
Just
ahead,
to add
John.
to what Vibeb said, I agree totally, and I think that it's finding, where the human element is best using your AI, whether it's a bot of some sort or some other means to augment whatever it is that you are doing in your process. And a lot of that comes down to something like the value stream mapping, where you look at every step of your process in smaller bits, and you try to understand what is the value that this particular action is bringing towards our end goal, which is collecting a payment. Is this a required step because of compliance or procedural requirement, or is this something that is unique to our business that we like to do because it gives value to us in a particular area? But when you break them down and look at it, from 30,000 feet, but also at a low level, you can find the areas where humans are just taking steps to get to that end goal, but maybe they're repeatable. Or even if they're not repeatable, maybe a very small amount of analysis goes into it where the AI can help bring you to that end goal without having to use resources or even human thought on that, where the person can focus on being a person, communicating to another person, and letting their bot assistant or their AI assistant fill in those gaps where these things need to take place to make that collection, but you want to focus on making a human connection while you're going through that process.
Right. And John, you bring out a very interesting point over there. The most low-hanging fruit for any solution or any AI solution is to, cover up for the repetitive task, cover up for redundant task which human agents are doing. And I would like to point out this thing specifically, that working with different customers, what we have seen is that these repetitive tasks can happen at the beginning of the call, which we usually think about, right? That doing authentication is a very repetitive task, and AI agents are in fact doing that thing very well. We have few customers in which the voice bots are able to match the RPC rate of human agents. But having said that, there are also customers, who have kind of come to us and said that, okay, when the human agents do collections, they basically involve an IVR system just to ensure that the card details and everything are getting captured in a secure manner and not getting captured by a human agent. To ensure PCI DSS compliant, right? And that IVR is doing the card capturing and everything, right? They asked us that, can you provide a bot? They were naming it a payment bot, which just does the payment part, right? Human agents do the entire thing of convincing the consumer to pay, and then they transfer to the voice bot to collect the payment. Now that's a miniature solution, but what I'm trying to say that, yeah, the low hanging fruits can lie at any point of the funnel, maybe the first half or the second latter half.
Totally agree.
And Mike, I'll just jump in here too. I think there's some great points made, and just to kind of bring a bit more clarity to everything, another way to break out, the answer to this question is look at the different types of AI and how they're being used in companies. And I go back to kind of the four categories that I have, which are generative AI, conversational AI, robotic process automation, and machine learning. And, of those categories, there's a debate on whether RPA is AI and whether machine learning is AI, but we'll keep that for purposes of our discussion today. But I also, when we're looking at workflow, of those four categories, machine learning, that has an ability to really affect the workflow and how you make especially if you're taking data and making decisions based off that data, that's where that shows up. And then I think the other aspect of it too is an automation, right? Automation can as has been mentioned here already, the bots can automate a lot of the human tasks and really affect and streamline a lot of efficiencies in your collections workflow. Now, the other two categories of conversational AI, we see a little bit of effect and touch on the workflow process, but a lot of times right now, the use cases we're seeing for it in the industry is kind of outside the CRM system. So it doesn't really have too much day-to-day effect of the workflow, quote unquote workflow there. And then generative AI, right now, again, the use cases that are being used in the industry are more content generation, maybe creating emails and follow-up communications, but then they're being added to the workflow and not really disrupting that workflow process. So it really depends on the type of AI technology and uses that you want to use that would really determine, how integrated and how disruptive that would be to your current workflow.
Right. In fact, you kind of prompted me to, speak on something because you brought out a very interesting point about workflows. And specifically workflows and knowledge around workflows has become so important that AI is something which is supporting the workflow, and the knowledge of workflow is the paramount or the most important thing, right? So what we have seen is that working with, or analyzing so many calls, debt collection calls, we keep finding the workflow edge scenarios, right? Just to give you examples, we developed a payment extension workflow for an auto creditor. We developed a hardship flow for maybe a particular agency, right? So in this manner of sequence, right, the workflow is getting so much augmented that is resulting into higher containment and higher, kind of lesser number of calls going to agents, and in a way reducing the FTE minutes getting spent on these calls and further giving ROI. So yeah, that workflow term is very important because developing and evolving the workflow is going to maximize the containment on the on any AI agent, voice bot, email bot, SMS bot, you pick any.
Okay. Vaibhav, I wanted to circle back to what you started at the beginning. You kind of laid out sort of the three steps to the funnel. One was RPC, one was PTP. I think the third one might have been CTC.
Yeah, that's the final collecting the hard money.
That's fine. Okay. And then I think you were talking about how the bot or the human can do any of those three steps. I guess so. My question is, I think you also said you want to try and get the voice bot to do as much as possible and then try and have a seamless transition to where the human sort of steps in. Is that how companies should be sort of conceptualizing and thinking about it? Is sort of like, as we talk about workflows, trying to, what can I get a bot to do, and try and whatever the answer to that question is, whatever tasks fit that description, get the bot to do it or get the technology to do it, and only then, as sort of like the fail safe or the fallback or the plan B, that's where the human gets involved.
Yes, I would say yes. And in a way that, I'm thinking about it, and we have so much learnings over there that when we study a debt profile, we are able to now say that, okay, a particular method is an optimal method to start with. Okay, so let's say a debt profile is a particular debt profile, which is a health debt, which are usually less than $500, right? So we have a very good learning that end-to-end collection on the voice bot will give good results, right? Let's say on the other side, we have a kind of a debt which is towards maybe a higher debt value and maybe has multiple complexities, right? So we want to enable a good handshake between the voice bot and human agents. So to answer your question, Mike, the answer is yes, but it depends on many conditions which we are able to, we as KIT, we have that experience and we are now able to consult that how to start and what should the starting point be. And obviously we want to go towards end-to-end collection getting enabled on the voice bot. And that is, like I've been saying, that is what will give result into maximum FT minute saving, because then that is the hard ROI coming in, right? So yes, to your answer, and the point which is very important is that we need to have a very good handshake between these AI agents and human agents. The context transfer is very important. So I think that is something I would like to emphasize on.
And
Yeah,
just to
and just to add to that, you know, we've talked on other AI panels and conversations about how, you know, the future, how to think about this is, you know, your human employees and your AI bots are essentially going to be coworkers working together in the future. And, you know, at you know, a simple way of thinking about it is, you know, AI bots are digital assistants that are helping to upskill and, you know, do the remedial mundane tasks that your human employees are going to either launch those bots, monitor those bots, or, you know, validate the data or the tasks those bots are doing to make sure they're being done compliantly. So it's really kind of a co-working relationship that, you know, that companies are using now and building towards the future.
And he basically took the words right out of my mouth, where I was going to say, you know, I envision a future where we're approaching that these will be systems working alongside the employee, whereas the handshake scenario or the handoff scenario might become less of a factor, where this is a tool alongside you the entire way. And there's multiple ways you can approach this, where the AI can replace certain steps that may not need to be done by a human, but it could also augment the steps that the human is still doing by allowing you to have a higher capacity for whatever it is that you are doing in that process. For example, if you're talking to a debtor and you are trying to get information out of them, you can have an AI agent or an assistant just listening for information and giving you an analytical summary or extracting key points that you really need to understand. And this could also take things like error out of the equation. Human error becomes less of a factor, and you focus more on that interaction where the compliance end of it, the data collection, that's happening by the AI system that's working alongside the employee.
Yeah. And just to add on that, John, and Hit, I think just to complement your points, yes, I think AI agent is, you know, able to do few things at a very high accuracy, like compliance. AI agents never deviate from compliance, right? And nowadays, what has happened is that we have, in fact, also developed a technology called bot on bot. So we have a bot which basically assesses the performance of the bot, and we can develop an entire call scorecard or a report based on predefined parameters that you would like or anyone would like to see, right? And the bot would judge or kind of score the bot on compliance parameters. So compliance is one particular part. In fact, the bots these days are able to identify sentiment and emotion and accordingly change the voice persona and tonalities, right? So that is something again which the bot can start with, convince the consumer to stay on the call, and then when if required, hand it over to human agents, or if not required, complete the entire payment, right? The best case. So yes, the bot and agents, the combination is working very well these days, and I believe the bot and AI agent should become the best friends of a human agent.
And something you said, I think, is very important, where that's where you go beyond simple robotic process automation, like Keith mentioned earlier, where we could have a discussion all day about whether that is or isn't true AI, and it's been around for a very long time. But the fact of the matter is that when you integrate that, you know, ability to take the temperature of a call, to understand context, and for lack of a better term, read between the lines of not just what somebody is saying, but the way in which they're saying it. Things that are a lot harder to pick up on and then make use of with just having a regular employee speak with no sort of agent helping them. You know, this is the way that we can take that next step and have a lot more predictive analysis and kind of see where things are going, maybe even before they get there.
Right. And I see a comment from Rolf over there on sentiment and emotion detection. Let me throw some more light on that. So what we have started doing these days is that since the voice bot and all the AI agents are able to detect emotion and sentiment, we in fact publish a dashboard around that. And we also have some critical alerts going out for something like fraud or someone saying something very critical, right? And these things are getting circulated with the entire team who is monitoring the voice bot at our client's end. So they have a dashboard, they can view all the critical terms like fraud, or maybe escalation to a manager and what's the frequency of these things coming up, and something which is very critical will get triggered as an email. So an immediate action can be taken on that. So yeah, I mean, there are very interesting downstream benefits of this sentiment and emotion detection.
And as we talk about sort of working alongside, or humans and AI working sort of side by side with each other in offices, what are the best practices, or what are the ways that companies should be training staff to work alongside AI to maximize productivity? How do you actually sort of go about and teach your staff, or get your staff to work with AI and understand it? What's that process looking like inside collection operations across the country? What should it look like?
So I
I
could say in my experience, it starts with helping your staff understand why in the first place it is that you're using a tool like AI and trying to integrate it into the workflow. Because, in order for this to be successful, they need to buy into the cause, and they need to understand this is something that's going to help the team, the organization. This is going to go further than just the simple thing that you as an individual are doing. And once you have that understanding, then it helps the employee understand, even better what it is that they're doing with their job every day. Well, what are the steps they're taking to get to that end goal, and why are they important? Sometimes we don't take a step back and ask ourselves these questions, that we get caught up in the monotony of day to day. And there's reasons behind everything that we do. So without going off on a tangent, I think it starts there. And from that point, once you have that buy-in, it's easier for them to learn more about AI and about the collections process.
Yeah, and I think expecting them to understand this, and also expecting us to kind of align our procedures and our workflow, which kind of makes their life easy, is something that we have been thinking about, right? So giving a thought over that and giving an example on that, I was talking about the agent transfer portal, a portal which basically allows information of the interaction that happened between the consumer and the AI agent to pass over to human agents, right? What we saw is that when we introduced a new portal, right, that portal became a new screen on agents' desktop. And we understand agents are already juggling between multiple screens. And introducing a new screen is like an additional load on them, right? So to make their life easier, to kind of enable them to adopt the AI agent, we started developing a pop-up on the same screen that they are using. So let's say they are already using a CRM system of a particular agency or a creditor, right? We can install a pop-up on the same system, and whenever the call gets transferred from, let's say, the voice bot to a human agent, a pop-up would come in with the details and a summary of what happened between the consumer and the voice bot. So that makes the life of an agent easy, and they would appreciate a call coming in from the voice bot, and also not re-ask those details which we don't want to kind of not hamper the customer experience of the end consumer.
I have a question here from the audience, and I'll use this as an opportunity to remind everybody, if you have a question for our panel or a comment, by all means, drop it in the chat or send it in through the Q&A. The question we have is, do you have clients using that sentiment and emotion detection, listening to calls with a collector and popping talk-offs based on how the conversation is going? Outside of technology, a reminder that the conversation is spiraling down can help the participants change direction. It seems this could be used to prompt conversation rescues.
Got it. I'll take that question, Mike, and I think it's from Ralph. So we as Skid, we are not offering this agent assist right now. But to answer your question, Ralph, I believe, yes, this technology exists. So assisting agents uh, with live conversation going on with the consumer, and capturing the sentiment and emotion and giving them some cues, this exists as a technology.
Yeah, there are vendors in this space right now that offer more of the AI-based speech analytics that absolutely, do it how we, typically think of speech analytics, which is kind of historical data, conversations that have already happened. But there's also a way to integrate it with real-time phone calls to be able to flag and put up notifications on the screen to, guide scripting and, direct the agent if a call is, varying because of the script, either the language in the script or the emotion that is conveyed in that conversation.
All right, so as these companies out there start to adopt this technology, start to put it into place, what are some of the challenges that might arise that they should be on the lookout for? Like, where are there potential roadblocks or barriers or stumbling blocks that you've either seen or can see a company having to deal with as they start to try and deploy this type of strategy inside their offices?
I can go first on this, Mike, since I think most of the challenges come from the compliance aspect of things, and that's making sure data security, privacy, other compliance laws, other compliance concerns, that not just what the current regulations are, but also the future regulations and how AI will be regulated in the future. And one of the reasons that I categorize RPA and process automation bots as AI, even though a lot of it is not AI, is because, I think in the last year, 2 years, we have about, a third of the states that have passed state AI legislation, but not all of them. And, a lot of people, and we've seen this in different states passing laws that pass broad definitions of AI regulations that include process automation. And so we don't want that to happen. We've seen states try to do it. We've been able to narrow that down, but we really want to get away from, that kind of definition. But until every state has a defined AI definition that does not include automation, we want to include that there. And so, we want to make sure that you're not just launching a bunch of bots that somehow meet a definition of AI by a state law and are now deemed illegal in a year or two next legislative session. And the example I will give is, conversational AI and making outbound phone calls to consumers. And up until February of this year, there was no it was kind of up in the air. Does the TCPA apply to outbound calls, to AI generated calls? And you could look at case law and kind of make a case of it, but there wasn't clear law. Well, in February, the FCC came out and put a final rule in place within less than 30 days and basically clarified and said that, TCPA consent and the TCPA applies to AI generated calls and AI voice on calls. So that was a quick change if you were a company that was operating under the mindset that, hey, that doesn't apply, right? So it's really a way to, so when you're thinking about compliance, it's not just what's with compliance with our current infrastructure, but it's how this could be regulated in the future to make sure we're utilizing this technology within a safe sandbox and safe playground so it won't be deemed illegal later on.
Just to add to what Heath was saying, it's difficult enough just understanding what needs to be done from a compliance end, but then you have to execute it properly. So in my experience, I think it's important to have an advocate who is technically competent, because once you understand the compliance that you need to abide by and all the laws and regulations that you need to abide by, you need to have somebody who can steer the ship and actually bring that to life and make sure everything happening behind the scenes under the hood is being done in a truly compliant manner. And sometimes there could be gaps between what a software engineer or a developer can put into a program and what the vision actually is by the customer. So you need somebody who understands the goal and all the minor milestones to get to that goal, but also understands the technical bedrock of whatever systems you're building and can help bring those two closer together so that you don't misstep when you're actually executing your plan.
Right.
John, that's a great point, because I was just at a industry conference a couple weeks ago. We had a roundtable talking about automation. There was maybe 10, 20, 15% of the companies there that were using automated bot technology. And what came out of that discussion was there was a gap between the industry knowledge of true FTE employees within the company and the programmers who are programming and kind of launching these bots. And so I think that's another, to speak to what you were just saying, like there's an information gap between industry knowledge and programming knowledge that I think hopefully we can bridge in the future. But right now it's a current challenge to implementing this technology within your company.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think everything this calls for is that we need to have a very robust implementation plan, and how we connect all these dots and ensure that all of the ducks fall in a row, right? In fact, one of the similar challenge that we have seen is that data reconciliation, right? We'll have human agents working on a file, we'll have AI agents working on a file, and then we would like the data to be reconciled. So we want a single source of truth for data, and that again needs to be kind of be handled by multiple functions, and the same challenge can come up. So reconciling data in a proper manner in, let's say, a CRM becomes a single source of truth, and how does the AI agent interact or integrate with the CRM, and how human agents are updating the CRM back, even that becomes important. So data reconciliation is one of the important point, I believe. And lastly, I would say that there is an adoption phase that happens whenever an AI agent is launched with the consumers, right? And consumers take some time to adopt with an AI agent. Maybe they were directly connecting to a human agent before an AI agent was launched. So they were used to talking to a human agent directly, but now they are coming across an AI agent. So they take a time, they take some few days, maybe a month to adopt, and then we see results, increasing and performance increasing. But if they are already landing on an IVR, and if they are facing like high queue times reaching to an agent, an AI agent immediately solves that. So they are kind of face a delight over there. So it's a kind of a adoption driven journey for initial few days.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because I think if you, especially, we have probably 30, 40 different CRMs that companies use within our space. And, if you're partnering with a UiPath or a vendor that's, using UiPath bots, are there successful implementation use cases for the uses with your CRM software, or is it going to be a new process? And that would also, I think, dictate the time to fully implement that. Where if it's a true new creation of a bot and process, that's going to take longer, versus if you're working with someone who already has bots created for the task that you want them for within your CRM software. That's a great point.
And just to add over that, Hit, in fact, that was our learning as well, that when we started operating, we came across many CRMs, in fact, CRMs from 1970s, 1980s, which did not have APIs.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Right? And then, we developed our own RPA system. So today, we are very proud to say that any CRM system that we come across, we are able to integrate either via API or using RPA, or even in fact using a data warehouse connector. So somehow, and we enable that we connect to the CRM system, because data reconciliation is a problem that needs to be solved. And without that, effectiveness of the AI agent will not come through.
John, I wanted to ask you to follow up on this concept of value stream mapping, because I think what I'm going to ask after is sort of how companies can kind of start to identify. If we're talking about how to use AI to make agents more efficient, there's obviously a process that companies are going to have to go through to figure out where they're going to sort of deploy the AI to improve the efficiency, and what priority and what order they're going to do that to. So I think the step before that is, like, I think what you were talking about earlier, is just sort of laying everything out and then sort of starting to dive in. So I'd love to, if you could just sort of elaborate a little bit more on what value stream mapping is and how to go about it.
I'd be happy to. So with value stream mapping, you're basically taking a look at your process from cradle to grave, and you are breaking them down into actionable steps that ultimately make up the entire process from beginning to end. So you take each step and you try to determine what are the resources that go into this particular step that's helping us get to our end goal. How much time goes into it? How much money goes into it? How many employees need to be participating in this particular step? And this gives you a picture of where your money is going, where your time is going, and how can you optimize your process as much as possible. And this is something that is way older than artificial intelligence. This is just an operational concept that, goes back to lean days and lean Six Sigma. So you take that concept, you map out all of your steps in a particular process, in this case, the collections process. And you can have AI in mind to see which steps are the weakest. Meaning, when I say weakest, it needs to be done, but it's not something that's adding a ton of value to your end goal, but you still need to check that box. So in my opinion, those are the ripest for AI to help fix that part of the process, whether it can totally take that step over from a human so they don't have to worry about it, or at least make it easier. Because if that step is deemed necessary, but not exactly value adding in the first place, then why does it need to be done? Maybe it's a compliance step. Maybe it's something compliance related that you have to do it. So you remove that human element and you can save that bandwidth for other more important steps in the process. And then once you iron out all those kinks and you can say, these are the steps that are really the best for adding AI to it, then you take it one step further and you see where AI can help the steps that the humans will still have to be doing along the way. And once you get through all of that analysis, the end result is ideally a more efficient process. And you're injecting that AI into the most beneficial parts for you as a business owner.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think getting a head start into the AI space, because this space is massively, evolving, is important. I mean, there are multiple challenges, like the challenge of consent for outbound calling was brought out, right? So there are solutions available, which can cater to all different type of consents, right? In fact, if consent is like a hard blocker, there are options, that we can start with an inbound channel for an AI agent, right? So getting a head start is important. Once we get a head start, we kind of narrow to the optimal point. We find that sweet spot, and that is where we further land. So it's a evolution journey, I would say, and starting in the journey is very important.
And Vaibhav, something you mentioned earlier is that humans can make mistakes, and this levels the playing field where you can get a repetitive response each time something happens, that you want to make sure you're getting the same result each time. So that can save you a lot of money and errors made. Humans make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can cost you a lot of money, whether it's a violation or something of that nature. This can potentially remove that from the equation because you're no longer relying on somebody that could make that mistake, and they're still focusing on adding the value where that value is best used.
Yeah, that's a great approach, and because one of the common questions when we talk about automation and a plug to Mike's Nerd Hub, we had a great discussion last week talking about automation and the question of how do I get started if I've never done this before, right? And it's taking an assessment and looking at the processes within your company that are repetitive, that are prone to errors, for mistakes. And with UiPath and other RPA automation companies, you can actually download the software and they will track your employees' keystrokes to find out what tasks are repetitive. And then I always look at and my clients that I work with, the reasons they're either implementing this for pain or for gain. And what that means is they want to focus on what's the biggest ROI that I can get from this bot and use case first, or where am I having the biggest issues within my company with staffing or broken processes, errors. And so it's either based on your pain points or what's the biggest ROI. And I think there's an approach where as you work through the automation process, you can kind of work towards the middle, with the pain and the gain, kind of working towards the middle as you automate different process throughout your company.
Right. And connecting this back to the funnel that we were discussing, in fact, Mike brought out that particular point. So what we do as Skit, when we analyze a particular deployment, let's say we are deploying a voice bot or a SMS bot, any AI agent for, let's say, an inbound channel or outbound channel, we break down the entire funnel into ROI, and we display an ROI for each step of the funnel, which might come through FTE minute saving, commission savings, off-hour collections, all of these different components that are part of this ROI calculation. So this gives a very detailed view of how the ROI would look like and then we can select, right? How, at which particular point we want to, till which particular point we want the voice bot or then AI agent to be implemented, and where should we kind of hand it over to human agents. So that decision can be taken once we have a view of that complete ROI breakdown.
And what's interesting with that is if you have the data, you can use AI to make those determinations. You can feed the data into some sort of, LLM and understand where are the points where we're looking to have the most, where is our value in this particular process, or, what are we looking to really push? And then that can give you the answers that then you go ahead and implement AI into those processes with the information that you gained from AI just by providing it a data set.
Right.
You guys jumped ahead and answered the next question I was going to ask, because the question I was going to ask was, is it better for a company to approach the decision from the perspective of deciding where they're the weakest, where they need the most help, or where technology is the strongest and might be the easiest to implement?
Well, I think we've had a good discussion, especially on the RPA side of it. But I think, if we look holistically at the four different types of AI, right? I think, which do we implement first? RPA, conversational AI, Gen AI, or machine learning. And I think it's really, looking at, holistically, what are your pain points? What's the biggest ROI amongst all of that? I think because RPA and machine learning have been around the longest, they likely have the more use cases and product market fit from a vendor. So if you're going to bring in a vendor to help you through machine learning and your scoring and your data and your workflow, decision making, or automation, right? There's already, I think probably we're getting close to 20% of the industry that's using automation bots in some way. And so I think, as that continues to evolve, there's more use cases there than, the generative and conversational AI, and they're growing as well. But, because that also affects, going back to what we were talking about earlier, the time it takes to implement this and the skill set, right? If you're working with a partner who's done successful implementations of this AI technology, it's going to take quicker. So I would say to add to what we said earlier about the pain and the gain of what do we adopt first, also look at the ease of implementation and the time of implementation as well.
Yeah, I would say, I think Head touched that particular point. I think for me, the ROI would be the paramount factor, and looking at where we can get the maximum ROI out, that should be driving the decision all through. Because I believe the implementation can be managed. It might increase by a few weeks, the whole project timeline or something like that, but the overall complications can be managed. Wherever it gives the highest ROI should be the particular point to start with. And that is somewhere that we as Kit, we can help you to analyze.
I agree totally. And I also think it's twofold because it really depends on where you as an organization stand. How much technical debt do you as an organization have? Sometimes organizations have so much technical debt, for those who don't know, that is just the insurmountable amount of changes that cannot be made for one reason or another, because there's certain technologies in your organization that have been around so long that things are developed a certain way, programmed a certain way, and it would be such a large change to make that it would have a domino effect in cases. So if you have a lot of technical debt, sometimes it's hard to look at the latest and greatest technology and just add it on top of your stack and say, this is going to work, because you're not positioned to make the best use of it. So like Vaibhav was saying, you look at your ROI and try to understand where are we now and try to remove a lot of that technical debt as much as you can to get yourself to a point where you can take on those AI solutions and it would be beneficial and viable.
Okay, so let's turn our gaze forward. Where do you see things going with respect to AI development and deployment inside this industry, and where do you see the biggest opportunities for companies to, get the best ROI from making some investments going forward?
I can start with that. I think one of the latest technology which is coming across in this space, in the conversational AI space specifically, is omni-channel um overall experience for a consumer, right? By which I mean basically is that having different AI agents, different bots such as voice bot, SMS bot, email bot, and human agents is also one channel. So I'll say different channels, and all channels having context being transferred among them, right? So let's say someone calls into the voice bot, uh, uh, let's say authenticates and then agrees for a payment, right? And then says that, okay, I will pay offline. Can you send me a payment link or something, right? And then the SMS goes through. And then he has some questions on the SMS, on the text message. So the SMS bot is able to pick from that particular point where the voice bot left, right? So all these channels are having a context transfer among them and with the human agent. So that's the cross-channel context switching or transfer, which is kind of developing now. So all these channels work in tandem and like in complementing each other, massively increasing the customer experience. That is something which is very interesting coming across. And then I think I touched upon the bot on bot, or we call it imposter bots. So we are also deploying different bots to analyze the bots and give out results. So these are the few interesting technology upgrades coming up.
And just to add to what Babak was saying, I think that, we're going to go to a place where, your employees are not simply just operators who are performing the collections process, but they're going to transform into more of, an emotional IQ vessel where they can interact with humans and fill in those gaps that AI simply falls short. And we may get to a state down the line where it's a lot more efficient at picking up on emotional intelligence and being able to pick up on things beyond just the simple temperament that it can currently. But it just changes the value that humans give to that collections process, because now if you're getting a call about a debt that you need to pay, it's not just someone calling you that you see them as the person you have to pay. Somebody that you don't want to hear from, somebody that they're just doing their job. Now when you implement AI into that and you can do a lot of the collections process with that, when you get to the point that you're interacting with a human, it almost changes the perspective and changes the temperature, because the person has the debtor almost has an ease brought onto them knowing they're interacting with a human. And maybe that can change the outcome because you're going to get better information or have a better experience if it even gets to that point. So you're not only cleaning up your operations and spending your time on more valuable things, but now you're reserving people to be where they're most valuable, which is that emotional part of the process. And there's always going to be emotional part of that process, no matter which way you slice it. This is dealing with human beings who have emotions, and dealing with technology and bots and AI can be very scary to a lot of people. And a lot of people have guards up when they first know that they're interacting with something that's, maybe not human. So that's where I think that they will eventually make even more of an impact, where that's where they're reserved for.
Yeah, I want to touch on that. I think that's a great point, John. I was going to say first, I think, where the future is going, just to kind of, give some statements here to kind of cast that imagination. Like, in 5 years, most companies will be hiring 2 programmers for every agent that they're going to be human agent on the phone. So we're going to see a continued shift as we see this continued adoption to RPA. And it's not like no one's forcing this. It's really a matter of the price has dropped over the last 5 years for automation bots that, small companies can afford it, mid-sized companies can afford it, large companies can afford it, and obviously can afford to bring on programmers. But it really is going to be the viable way to stay efficient as we expect, compliance costs to continue to increase, insurance costs to continue to increase. Those barriers to entry to be able to automate, a lot of these tasks and have that co-working relationship between your humans and AI really is the future. And I think, to your point about people are scared about this, employees are also scared about losing their jobs to AI. There's plenty of articles they can Google and read about that. It really, it is important to stress to them that you're not looking to take their job. You're looking to take the mundane remedial tasks away from their day-to-day work and really look to upskill them and make them a more valuable member, emotionally intelligent, as John was saying, member to the company. And the other aspect to it too, where it's going to come in, that we didn't talk about this much today, Mike, but it was one of your questions, and talking about what trends are coming. And that is the fact of consumer adoption of their own bots, and having consumer chat bots now make inbound calls to your system. Because those consumer bots, we typically think of our workflow with live humans, and there'll still be plenty of that. But live humans don't like the debt collection process. They want to get off the phone as quickly as possible. And we've altered our workflows to accommodate for that. We've taken out some of the friction with verifying if a consumer is actually a consumer. We're taking out some of those 2-part steps down to a 1-part step, right? Well, an AI bot that's being launched by a consumer, it doesn't care how long it's on the phone. It wants to get the right answer, and it's gonna, your talk times are gonna increase as consumers launch these chatbots. We've seen them launch. We've seen AI solo suit. They file answers for them. We've seen AI debt negotiators now engaging with companies. And honestly, I've said this before, but once the Apple iPhone and Apple Intelligence and iOS 18.3, they're saying, will let you connect OpenAI to Siri. You can get an email, turn Siri on, say, hey, Siri, read this email and call this debt collector and negotiate the best deal on this account, and launch that. That's coming in the next couple of months once we get that iOS 18. So even if you are just thinking and internally for your company, how do we adopt AI? You also need to have the mindset about how consumers are going to be using this AI, and how either our humans or our voice AI are going to be engaging in bot-to-bot communications, negotiating those debts. And that's a whole other topic we could talk about, but that is one trend that we're right on the cusp of seeing. And if we're looking at what's the future of it, I think we're going to have the agentification of the debt collection experience, where bots are talking to bots on phone calls or online through web chats.
Yeah, and on that one, Head, connecting this back to what I was saying, the multi-channel or the omni-channel experience, what is also happening is that we end up creating a journey. When I say a journey, it means that, okay, for this particular consumer, make a phone call, then maybe send a text message, and then maybe send an email. So let's say this is a part of the journey, right? And running this kind of journey or different, combination of outreaches through different channels, we map out which is the most optimal channel to reach out a particular consumer. And that's the level of intelligence that gets created. And when I say these, like voice, email, and SMS, human is also a part of the fourth channel, right? So we find out that, okay, this particular consumer is most responsive to a human. So directly call via human, don't even involve AI agents. The second consumer is more responsive to a SMS bot, right? So send him an SMS, and then SMS can be replied back. Maybe someone else, he or she may be more responsive to a voice bot. So make the voice call first, then an SMS, then to voice. So that's the kind of intelligence that is getting developed, that which particular channel is the most optimal, or what sequence of channels is the most optimal for a particular consumer. And when I say a particular consumer, that means a particular debt profile.
Okay, we are just about almost out of time. We do have time to go one last trip around the panel. So what I'd like each of you to do is, if there's one piece of homework, one action step, one objective that people should immediately undertake as soon as this webinar is over, based on everything we've discussed, what is that one thing that everybody should be doing inside their own operations? Heath, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so since I'm the compliance attorney and we haven't spoken much about compliance today, I'll throw my compliance plug in here. And that is, part of this value journey and value assessment of AI technology, you absolutely want to incorporate compliance, because the reality is, if you're not doing that, if you don't have an AI policy that covers what your employees and what your vendors can do, even today, then you may have employees and vendors using ChatGPT or other AI, use cases without your knowledge or consent. That's what you don't want to have. So I'd say, kind of the fundamentals of AI compliance would be an AI policy that speaks to the 4 different types of AI, how you want to use it, that can help you ideate out how to, use cases and how you want to use it. You want to have an AI committee that meets regularly because these things change so much, and, forced vendor uses. I mean, Adobe, Zoom, Microsoft, Google, all these platforms of, that we use on a regular basis, and sometimes we pay for, in the case of Adobe or, Zoom, they're now updating their policies, training AI. So you could be having Zoom calls and they could be training AI, off those calls. We want to make sure we cover all those vendors. And then the last aspect of it is really kind of, mapping out an AI risk assessment. When you do use a vendor, and have a use case for AI technology, have that compliance risk assessment and see where that data is going. Make sure it's compliant with the FTC safeguards, make sure you have the right to delete it or the right to have oversight of your vendors that are deploying the AI use cases for you.
Excellent. Well said. Thank you very much. John?
I would say do some value stream mapping of your own. Look at your operations, look at your business, and understand where the value is and what value is being brought to your business through your processes. And then learn more about what AI truly is and the 4 different types that Heath mentioned. Understand how you can implement those into each various step as a part of the process, because some different types of AI may work better in other areas. Maybe robotic process automation is good for certain tasks, and other things, machine learning is better because you're just trying to get information out of a lot of different instances you have, maybe phone calls that have taken place, or any data sets that you can learn from. Point being, narrow it down to smaller bits and bytes, and then try to improve whatever it is that you're doing from that point on, and see how AI can help you improve that along the way.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Bye, Bev.
Yeah, I think I'll echo. I was thinking what John was saying, the same thing. But I'll say that it would be good if we can analyze the different, like we started with the funnel and different steps of the funnel, right? So if we can analyze the performance across different funnel, find out the lowest hanging fruit, and then analyze and discuss. I mean, there are experts available. There are people. I mean, in fact, we also do consulting, right? So we can find out the lowest hanging fruit which can be addressed via AI, right? And which can give the maximum ROI. So I would say think about the lowest hanging fruit that you can think about, and then we can discuss about ROI and which is giving the highest ROI with among the lowest hanging fruits. We can start over there. Getting a head start is important, and then expanding from there will happen.
Excellent. Well, bye, Bev, John, Heath, I want to thank each of you so much for being here today. On behalf of everybody who's watching this live or watching a recording of this and walking away with a much better understanding of what, how AI is impacting collection or credit collection operations today, and, how they should be looking at, developing and deploying AI in their own offices. Thanks to each of you for being here and sharing. I want to thank Skit.ai again for sponsoring today's webinar. Please check them out at skit.ai. To those of you watching and listening, thank you so much for being here. Always appreciate you making us part of your day. Thanks for being here. If you're watching us live, we're back with a webinar at 1 o'clock Eastern tomorrow, where we're discussing New York City's new debt collection regulations. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, you can find the link on the events calendar at accountsrecovery.net. Would love to see you back for that tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Thanks so much for being here, and we look forward to seeing everybody soon. Thanks, everyone.